Wow. Well, first of all, let me say Happy New Year's, everybody. Hello, hello. I know we're back. It's January. Can you believe it? 2026. How fitting for us to kick off this episode with a special guest. But before we go into all of that, let me first say welcome back to another episode of What Anna Said podcast. Today, we're joined by one of our very good friends. It's so weird to say friend and not sister
Yeah.
because this is somebody that we definitely lived life with, and we've grown up together and we've seen each other through every season. And so it's so exciting to be able to share her story with you, a fellow mom, a fellow sister. And so let's just get to it. Today, we'd like to introduce you to Edner Fry.
Thank you for having
Yay!
me.
Yeah, so thank you so much for doing this, Edner. I know it's been a long time coming. For those of you who don't know, Edner is our childhood friend. We've literally grown up together. We've seen each other as teenagers, as young adults, as moms, which is really cool, seeing somebody through every season of their life. And so today we get to talk about her story, talk about her journey, and share that with all of you. So thank you so much for being here, Edner. We're so excited to kick this off.
Thank
Okay.
you for having me, Anna.
Yes. So let's just get straight into it. Okay, Edner. Number one, for those who may not know you yet, how would you describe yourself today as a woman, a mother, and a believer?
Well, first of all, thank you, Castle Sisters, for having me here today on your Did I ever say Castle Sisters?
That's
But
fine.
anyways, thank you so much, sisters, for having me today on your podcast. And for those who are watching, thank you so much for tuning in. For those who do not know me, my name is Edner Fry. What would best describe me, as I would use for myself, is that I am fairly calm by nature. I may come off reserved, but I love meaningful conversation with people. As a believer, my faith is the foundation of who I am as a mother and as a woman. God has guided me through this journey of life and has helped me shape me into and lead me into who I am today and how to raise my boys as a mother.
Mhm. Well, thank you for that full, complete answer.
Yes.
When you look at your life now, what are you most grateful for in this season?
Every season, I'm always grateful for my husband, Antonio. He is someone who encourages me. He's someone who's always rooting for me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so for this new season, one of the new things that has been happening in my life is the support of other people. And honestly, it's you guys. The Lions Club, the Little Champs, the homeschooler co-op that we're all a part of, we're all growing in our purpose. And so having like-minded people to grow with in this season has truly taken us so far. So seeing how
Yeah.
far you can get with people who supports you, who sees your vision and
Yeah.
pursues and helps you pursue your purpose, literally is what has made me feel so grateful for this season.
Yeah. You're not wasting any time here.
Yeah.
You're just going straight into it. You're answering, these meaningful answers. And I love that you started out with that. Is the thing that you're most grateful for in this season. Like you said, in every season, it's your husband. And wow, what a beautiful testimony and what a beautiful thing to hear about that support, through every season, him just being there. And like you said, how important it is to be together with like-minded people, supporting you, working together towards your goals and, like you said, your purpose. And so that leads me to my next question, which is what made you say yes to sharing your story publicly on this podcast?
What made me say yes is my testimony of how God has helped me. And if God has helped me, I know that this story will thrive through anyone who needs it the most. So if you're watching and you're someone who might need this story, I pray and hope that it blesses you, encourages you to be delivered in whatever circumstances that you are going through. I wanted to say yes, to be brave, to be able to share my story with my people out there who needs to hear the encouragement and to see God in the way that I've seen him through my journey in my life. That's why I would love to share my story with all of you.
Thank you so much, Edner. And just thank you for saying that, and then whoever is listening right now, if you want to take the time to pause this and share this with a friend that might need to hear some encouragement, maybe a fellow mom that might need to hear Edner's story, please share this because this is not just something that she's sharing with you guys. This is something that has also blessed us in our lives, personally, just seeing the things that you walk through and just seeing how you've come out of that and just all the grace and just your testimony. That is something that that's the reason why I wanted you on
Yeah.
here and why we wanted you to come here and share that. So thank you so much for saying that. In all of your answers, there's a consistent theme that comes across, and that is your faith, and that is your foundation. And like you were sharing, earlier, is that is what is the reason that you are here today. The reason that you want to share your stories, because you want to share about God's work in your life
Mhm.
and how he's turned that around, and you want to share that with as many people as you can. So growing up, you grew up in church and faith, and growing up in church, faith was present early in your life. What did faith look like for you as a child?
So I just want to make it kind of clear. I come from divorced parents, and so I have to sort of share that to share how things look like from my point of view. I am the fourth of six siblings, and so being the middle child and seeing how the oldest had wasn't getting the answers, or the youngest ones wasn't getting answers, I knew that I definitely wasn't. So what I'm trying to say is that however that life was going, I just rolled with it. I didn't ask questions to my parents how things were going. I saw my family for who they were and followed them in their footsteps and how our life had went through. So as soon as they separated, immediately we moved here to Texas because we had family here at the time, and so my mom was like, "Let me come here," because at that time there was a cousin that lived here, and all her siblings were far away from her, so far in New Zealand, and so she couldn't just go there. So we came here to Euless, Texas, of course, and stayed here with family. And from my mom's words, by the time I had come around, it was certain that my parents would have divorced. So
Mm.
I say this to say that I hope to paint a picture that I was born into the time where things wasn't completely figured out. I was going through a moment where my parents are trying to figure what's going on. My mom was trying to see what was going to be the best thing for her children. So eventually, sometime we living here in Texas. My mom, of course, remarried to my stepdad, and he was a Pentecostal. We started going to this Pentecostal church, which is interesting because at the time it was at a park. And so that was my introduction at around the age of 6, was church at the park.
Mm.
And so going from having no church at all and not having any knowledge to it, to my awareness, if I had gone to church prior, I did not know what that was, or no one made it clear that we are going to church because it wasn't regulated in our routine. So as we're going to the park, I thought, why are we sitting here in the park and there's a man at the front speaking for like an hour? So I didn't, and no one explained to me that it was church or what was going on. So I just sat there and listened, obeyed my mom, by sit still and listen. But I didn't understand what was going on exactly because
Mm.
he spoke in Tongan, and again, I was just going through the routine of what my siblings were doing and what my parents had told us to do. And so
Mm.
church was present to me. That's how church was introduced to me.
Right.
Eventually, our members were able to get a building, and we and that church was built.
Mm.
So um, faith in the church did not take notice till I realized what was taught at church and at home, it didn't align. So what was
Mm.
taught at church and what I was going at home, like I said, it didn't align. I started to have questions, and I think at the time when I was going through what I was going through at home, I started to see and realize, because obviously going to church, you have Sunday school teachers. They're teaching you about faith. They're teaching you about hope. God was being introduced in my life. And so with what I was struggling with at home, I thought, how does this work together? Because you're telling me at church that he's hope and that he loves you and that he
Mhm.
cares for you. But at home, unfortunately, was going through something that I would love to talk about, not to share anything in a sense of gossip, but to share with my people of something that happens quite often that may sound taboo within our culture.
Mm.
But I was being sexually abused by my stepfather at home. But we were church goers. And so that
Mm.
was confusing to me because I was still young, and because that was normal for me at the time. Eventually I realized as time was going that this was something that should not had been going on. But again, I my faith came when I had to ask God, where are you in this? How did this make sense? What does faith come in? How does hope really look like? Because at home, that's not what that looked like for me. So faith
Mm.
was saying to myself that I hope that there has to be I pray and hope that there is a God to help me
Mm,
take me out of the situation that I was going through at home. Because in church, I was seeing families together and seeing happy faces. I was seeing people worship. So like, that's how I kind of realized that
mm,
something here wasn't adding up for me.
mm,
That's how faith and church was introduced to me early in my
mm.
life.
Wow, that is tough, and that is a lot happening at such a young age.
Yes.
You shared at a young age, being a child of divorce and being old enough to understand kind of what's going on. My family is separating, and we're moving, and the next close kin is your mom's cousin, which brings you to Texas. So
Mhm.
that brings you guys here to Texas, and then during that time here in Texas is when you're introduced to this new kind of like, okay, is this a habit? I mean, is this a what are we doing in this open park,
Yeah.
and this guy's talking for an hour and I'm not on the slides. So, and just kind of taking that in as the child, and the whole world is, you're just kind of observing what is going on,
Yes.
and where is my mom taking me, and this must be something of significance because we keep coming here every Sunday, or I'm going to the Sunday school now, and then while you're going through that, because that's already a life altering thing for a
Right.
child to go through divorce, or to have to face a significant change like that in their life. But now you're being introduced to this new way of living, this new lifestyle, and now you're part of this church. And as sad as it is the people, the person who's introduced you to this church, like you said, your stepdad was at this he's the one who took you guys here to the park, introduced you to the
Yes.
Pentecostal church where you were, and so now you're this belief system is being introduced to you, and you're being taught that there's a God, and He is hope, and He is love, and about faith, and you're learning all these things in Sunday school, while at the same time going through, as you mentioned, the abuse at home, in
Mhm.
your home life, like in your day to day.
Yeah, and that's good to mention. I thank you because so because my parents were divorced, my biological dad, of course, he was no longer present in my life, and so this just changes and dynamics. And I can't imagine what my older siblings had to go through because they had
Right.
a closer relationship and they're a lot older than I was.
Mm-hmm.
I was a lot closer to my mom.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever my mom was, that's where my comfortability was. So I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
whatever mommy say, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
follow you. And
Right.
so, yeah, that was a dynamic of change that me and my siblings had to go through from there.
Mm-hmm.
And then coming here, and then my stepdad coming into our lives,
Mm-hmm.
and then being introduced to a church out of a sudden,
Mm-hmm.
not having any idea to my knowledge of what church was and
Mm-hmm.
who ever, and not even acknowledging that there was a God till
Mm-hmm.
this point.
I think something that you said earlier that really stuck with me is, like you saying, being introduced to this belief system, going through this thing at home, and just like the absolute contrast between those two things happening, being taught about heaven but going through hell. And
Yes.
something that you said was, you weren't hoping like, okay, God, I hope that you do this or whatever. You were like, I hope there is a God, because if there is a God, I need help. Like, I need you to help. I need you to see me. And just, hearing that, especially knowing, like you said, you were the age that you were when these things were happening, and just kind of, like you mentioned, not just you, but even, your siblings also going through this thing with you,
Right.
but each of you individually having your own journey through that. Um,
And that's good because I only want to speak in my experience and from my perspective. And even though something that happened, like being sexual abuse, happened, and that should never had happened, I am thankful that my stepdad took us to church because I found God
wow.
there, right?
Wow, that's you know, the thing is that you've walked through that. You've lived that life, and you have earned everything that it is that you're saying, everything that it is that you believe in the lessons that have come out of this, your convictions, all of those things are completely your own.
Mhm.
You own that. And that is just, I mean, I have to sit with that one a little bit, is, the person that you're the person that has caused you that harm, that sexually abused you, even in all of that, and you still have the strength to say that I'm still grateful that that's the person that introduced me to church, that introduced me to God. Wow. Um, and we'll definitely, as we go along this story today, as we share this with our listeners, I'm sure we're going to come back to this and kind of expand, continue diving into that part of your story. As I sit with that, because that's, like I said, that's, I can't even, my mind can't even. Um, during that time, during this time, was there a season where you felt distant from God, even though you were around church? Church was happening all around you. I'm sure you know it wasn't just Sundays. There was, I'm sure church became, especially as in our culture, you know, church is really intertwined. It's a part of your everyday life. Thank you so much for sharing that and for being vulnerable with that. That's something that's tough, you know, because um, whatever it is that comes from this, you've already set in your mind that you're ready for them, that you're ready to deal with it. Whatever repercussions, whatever questions, whatever, you know, you're opening yourself up here and you're being vulnerable, not just on this platform, but with everybody that's listening to it and sharing your experience, your personal journey. And so, thank you so much. Thank you again for that. You shared that your family went through significant changes when you were young. How did those experiences shape the way you viewed security, trust, or God?
Yeah. So the abuse was still going on at home. I ended up sharing this secret to a friend of mine at school because eventually, after about 8 years of going through this and having to go through the confusion, enough obviously was enough. And so at school, I shared with a friend of mine because I became suicidal from the depression of what I was going through at home.
Mm,
And I got to a point where I was like, I'm just going to self harm myself at this point, right? Because nothing, like you said earlier, it felt like hell, right? I'm being
mm,
preached heaven at home, but at home, I mean, sorry, I'm being preached heaven at church, but at
mm,
home, it did feel like hell. And so it became too much. And so I began to have suicidal thoughts and eventually started to self harm myself. And
mm,
then I had a friend at school that I shared this with, and I'm so thankful for that friend because she ended up telling
mhm,
her mom. And then the next day, I got pulled out of class
mhm,
because CPS had showed up to the school, and so that's how that was such a huge dynamic because I was scared because even though I was a child, I thought what the only thing that came through my mind at this point was I wanted to protect my mom. I was so worried about what she
mm,
was going to say because she didn't know anything that was going on, and she was just so innocent through all of this. Even though I'm saying this as a child, but that was the thoughts that I had in my mind that kept me hostage. Because obviously, about 8 years, I'm in middle school at this time, so I had some knowledge that something wasn't adding up, and that this was not okay. I had made up my mind at this point that yeah, this is not okay. So
mhm,
eventually, my stepdad went to prison, and so the changes were I finally got to see the change of the change wasn't the change that I expected. Like he finally went, my stepdad went to prison, and immediately you would think like, oh, okay, like everything is done with, the battle is done with. Now we can finally move forward. But what had happened was he was the main provider, and so that's why I really want to share this story because a lot of people are going through this, and sometimes you don't know what happens after someone does go to prison. You might think, okay, perfect. I'm glad to hear that he's gone or she's gone or whatever that circumstance is for your family. But these families are really going through it because if they're the main provider, now who's going to pay the bills? Who's going to go? Who's going to go to work? And so I watched my mom do her absolute best to hold us as much as she could in the financial department. Eventually, so it happened that same month she lost her job and got laid off. And then now I'm looking at her and thinking, whoa, like what did I just do?
yeah,
Because I thought something that happened, that it was gonna be great, but I saw her suffering. And then eventually my siblings and I, my older siblings, we had to get jobs because we all had to help out to pay this. And it was such a burden that my mom did not want to put on us whatsoever. But looking back, I understand how she thought that that was the best thing for us. And during those times, I don't, again, speaking from my perspective, I don't think that she received the help that she needed to handle such a huge um, dynamic that had just happened within our family. And so I had to watch my brothers and my siblings sort of fall apart in all of these things. And so I thought again, when this had happened, I thought this was an answer from a prayer from God. But then seeing our sufferings after this, I thought, where is God in this? Why does it feel worse when he left, my stepdad left? Why, when I thought the problem was gone, that we had ran into more problems? And the reason why I said it's such a significant change for families because, especially if they're not able to make the bills and pay all the things, you start to lose things. So we had lost vehicles. Um, where I let one go and just seeing things slowly disappear and seeing our income shrink over time drastically from just my stepdad going to prison. But being in a financial burden on top of the heartbreak was really rough. And so, yeah, so my trust with God was like, Lord, where are you in this? Like, really need you to pull through from this one. Where do we go from this? My trust was very, very slim at this point.
Mm. I can't imagine the weight that you as a child, especially thinking about how you said you wanted to protect your mom, and all of this, that you carried that with you, that in that moment of you confiding in someone and then, CPS being called and them stepping in and taking him from the home and all of that, those things. Um, First of all, the weight of the decision that you had to contemplate beforehand to even reach out outside of your family, because you confiding in someone is you reaching out for help, and as a child, whether you were aware of that decision or not, but just to think about you weighing it out, and you saying this, it's enough, this is enough, and on the other hand, just wanting to protect your mom from this, wanting to protect your family, and then from the decision being taken out of your hands, and the authorities stepping in and doing what they needed to do, and now here it is again, the same weight, and except this time it's you seeing the suffering, now seeing your mom having to immediately take that place and try to make ends meet, and try to, now all that income, everything that was coming in before is now gone, like in an instant, gone. And for you to see, the whole entire family carried the weight of that, and was under the pressure, like through your eyes, seeing that, having to all start going to work, and even, your lifestyle even changing, because now you can't live the way that you lived anymore, because of now living under less income than what was before. Just all of those changes that were taking place in your life, and just thinking about kind of like this is a recurring theme in your life, starting from when you were little and seeing your parents go through divorce, and getting thrown into this new thing, like, okay, now we go to church, and now we do this, and then from that, having to find the strength, like you shared earlier about you going through real life suicidal thoughts and depression, and even self-harm, to the point of self-harm. I can't imagine the strength it took for you to reach out, for you to be already, like you said, in hell, feeling like just going through hell every day, and just being in that pit of despair, and not even knowing, like, if there's really a God, or what's, and hurting yourself. But even with all of that, you still had the courage and the strength to reach out for help, to say, to draw the line and say, that's enough. And then here we are, like you said, people think, okay, that's it, it's done, now you guys can move on, now everything's better. No. And if anything, now there's a new hell, and now there's all the ways, and not just financially, but even just in all the other ways that it changed the dynamic in your family, within your siblings, within your relationship as mother and daughter, sister and brother, and just all of those things. Like, what is that? Nobody walks out of that unaffected,
Yeah.
And so, while you were going through all of these things, was there a season through all of that where you felt distant from God, even though, like, did you continue to go to church afterwards? What was happening internally during that time?
Yes. During the times even before my stepdad went to prison at the age, again, the abuse about 8 years. But during that time, I was about 11 years old when we went to a church conference in California. And I want to bring a little bit of redness into when there is an abuser in your home and you're at church, you don't feel safe and you don't feel safe to worship.
Mm.
You almost feel like, and every time when I was in church, and you had the end of the prayer, who would like to come
Mm.
and and receive the gospel of Jesus Christ? And I remember sitting there, and every time, every single time, the pastor said, "Come forth," it was like I had to hold my feet to the ground because it was hard to be open with your person sitting next to you, right?
Yeah. Mm.
Um, and I say that to say, when we went to California for the conference, there is someone who I got to have one-on-one time with her, and she was an amazing person that I met at the conference, and an adult, and she was like, hey, she sat with me, and she saw that me and my sister, she thought that was interested in knowing who God was more,
Mm.
and so she was like, oh, okay, so she sat with us and she talked with us, and then she's like, do you guys want to receive? Do you believe in the gospel? And so she led us into the prayer of salvation, but immediately, and we enjoyed that. Me and my sister
Mm.
had the best time enjoying that conference. When within it was like about a week, but on the way home, I remember thinking like, Lord, like I like thank you, Jesus, for opening up that opportunity
Mm.
for me to not be ashamed, because that was a prayer of mine when I was younger, is to Lord give me that one-on-one because I don't know how to do it publicly yet,
Mhm.
because of all the things that was going on. And so I felt like he heard me then. But on the way back home, driving, mind you, we're driving from California to
Yeah.
Texas. That's a lot, a couple
Yeah.
hours to
Yeah.
talk to the Lord. So on the way home, I said, Lord, how did this work? Because I just got saved. Like, and thank you so much for opening this opportunity. But now I'm on my way home, and this is going to happen again. This might happen again. Like anxiety crept up in me because I thought, like, how can I be free? How can I do all these things? So I knew eventually, like I was holding on to who I thought I knew God to be. I
Mm.
saw again the people who were worshiping. I saw the faith of others, and I knew that He was real through all those things. And I heard like little glimpse of Him through my life, and so I knew again that He was real. He was answering these little droplets of prayers that were big and mighty for me, for someone who was confined, right?
Mm.
But because I struggled to trust God completely, I distanced myself only because, well, they edit this part, right? They kind of,
Mhm.
um, your dad would edit something.
Mhm.
Okay.
He
Yeah.
does.
So that was around the age of 11. Sorry,
Mhm.
Neela, if you're editing this. I thought I put that in here. That was at the age of 11. God finally gave me clarity around the time my stepdad did go to prison, and it was at the age of around we were in high school,
Mhm.
and when I was in high school, I remember that's where I met you guys.
Yes.
You guys
Yeah.
came, and that must have been an answered prayer. Mind you, like I said earlier in the beginning of this, is that our pastor at the time only spoke in Tongan, and I did not know a thing about. I could not understand Tongan. I'm sorry,
Mhm.
but I had a hard time with that because I couldn't understand the things that I wanted to make sense. I had a lot of questions, is what I'm saying.
Mm.
I had so many questions because again, I was aligning all the things. I was trying to match up what made sense here to make sense here
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
I was doing my homework at home and trying
Mm.
to figure out who God is,
Mhm.
and trying to get a little glimpse, because one of the things I want to encourage your parents is that read your Bible to your children.
Mhm.
And this is not on my mom, but I saw her read her Bible, but she never read it with me or to
Mhm.
me. And so I was piecing the pieces of what I had at church, at home, and trying to match up what I could the best I can. Even though I could read it, and looking back, I know that I only read it for the surface. I didn't understand it yet in the level of my understanding, because
Mhm.
one of the things I think that we need to do a better on is why I'm so purposeful. I mean, why I care so much to being a part of the children's ministry now, but it's to shepherd these children who first comes to the Lord, and making sure that you are helping them and that you're mentoring them and you're counseling them in any questions that they have, so that you can let them know, and let them know what they need help in, but also let them do their homework to learn how to hear from God, and so that they can have that one-on-one personal relationship with the Lord.
Mhm.
And so when my stepdad went to prison, and I met you guys,
Mhm.
your dad came and he shared this project. It was so cool, which was called The Journey of Man.
Mhm.
But in it, he took every possible verse, and he remember he made each of us learn it. And that was the first time that I experienced scripture memorization. I did not know Again, to my awareness, I did not know that that was a thing to memorize scripture and keep it in your heart. And so when he did that, I began to go with the Lord. And because I had not a relationship, because I didn't have a relationship with my dad, and my stepdad was an abuser, I struggled with abandonment issues with God, because I know that He's good. Lord, I trust you. I hear other things, and I can feel that you are a good God, but it doesn't add up to what I'm seeing in the physical, right? And so when when your dad had Neela Asadati had taught us the gospel in such a way for me to understand, and how much God journeyed through to just to reach us, immediately I thought, oh, God is not a mean God. God is love. I began to search, as I began to understand, and just having that leading of understanding made me realize, oh, that God wasn't mean, and God isn't this God that I envisioned Him before. I have a little bit more depth into who He was to me. But again, in high school and going through all the things that we go through as high schoolers, and seeing my family fall apart, seeing my brothers fall into what they were doing, and all of us just trying to make it at this point, it was really, really hard. And I came to the point of, like I said, the depression, the suicidal, and I thought to myself, Lord, where are you? Um, where are you in this one here? Like, I I felt sorry, I felt, oh, there we go. Thank you, Jesus. I felt that nothing good was going to happen to me because I saw other good things happening to other people, but not to me. I thought maybe the good stuff doesn't happen to me. Maybe I started to believe in the lies that was loud in my voice, and I began to distance myself. God never left me, but I distanced myself from Him because I thought, let me leave Him before He leaves me. It's the idea that I have when I talk about abandonment, right?
Yeah.
And so at that point, I said, you know what? I began again having to believe the lies that I believed in. I began to separate myself. Like I said, I was like, let me leave you before you leave me. I put him in a level of who my earthly fathers were. And so at that point, looking for love anywhere, I found myself in the arms of a same sex relationship and homosexual relationship for about 4 years. And that was the time I distanced myself the most, because I said, Lord, I already knew it was wrong, but I felt, what's the purpose of living right? I didn't understand how, if living right, what good comes from it is kind of what I was thinking of. And so when I made a decision to finally be in this relationship, I said, Lord, I'm gonna I'm cutting ties from you, with you from here on out. So the distance part was definitely on on my behalf because of feeling of the abandonment.
Yeah, I remember because we were in each other's lives at this point. And you know, walking through that. And as a kid, as kids at that time, like you said, you just assume, like people on the outside assume, okay, we're over that now. Like we've passed this, you know, your stepdad went to jail. Like here we are, like let's move on.
And that's good to say, because that's exactly how I felt. Everyone's life goes on. Like when something drastic happens like that, you would like people's life does move on, but yours is like you have
Yeah,
it. You struggle
you're
with
right.
this.
Like no, it's not. I'm still, even though they created the mess and they left, the mess is still here. And you had to deal with that. And you had to navigate that. Like you said, your siblings, all of you guys, your mom, everyone was navigating that on their own, you know, through that mess. And whatever vices you ran to, or whatever habits or things that you ran to, that was your way of coping with it and dealing with it. And for you to recognize, you know, you came to know the Lord, you came to know like, wow, all of these good things. And then you immediately, you know, your wall went up. And you, let me grab this now, because but your wall went up and you were like, okay, let me stop it now, you know, because nothing, I don't deserve anything good, nothing good ever comes to me, you know. And you looking around at that time, like they have such a good life, and this person, you know, they're so blessed, and then here's me. And all my life, all I've ever known is separation. All I've ever known is abandonment. All I've ever known is, you know, abuse. And so for you to come into this new thing that is so foreign, this true love, this unconditional love that is foreign to you, you're like, no.
That's a good word. It was very
Right.
foreign. Yes.
And so for you in your mind at that time, like, you're not going to even get the chance to hurt me. I won't allow you to hurt me. So I'm going to leave you. I'm going to distance myself from you. I'm going to close this chapter. I'm going to say goodbye because I'm not going to give you the chance to hurt me. And so, seeing you, because that's really what took place. I remember having many conversations with you in high school. And for those of you that don't know, like, we were best friends. We were best friends when we first met. When I came, it was at a time in my life where it was like we needed each other, and we spoke the same language, and we really, the first time we met, we really clicked, and we were like two weirdos, and which is why I loved you so much, because it was like, you're weird like me. And we were walking through. I remember we were each other's accountability partner,
Yes.
big time. um big time. And we would just text each other about things like, if she sees me doing too much at school, or like I see her doing too much, I'm like, hey, we check in with each other. But this was real, and this was more than any friendship. This was real life for you, and you were really going through it at that time. And you really, when you said you separated, you distanced yourself from God, you really did. And I remember having that conversation with you. Like you said, you jumped into homosexuality and into that relationship, and having that conversation with you. And I think I even remember something about, just talking about, as kids, we're like, oh, you're going to go to hell. It's so, in your mind, it's so black and white, and this.
Yeah.
And but I remember you were like, and if I go to hell, I go to hell. Yeah, you were you were already convinced, you were already set on the path that you were going. um but you bringing that up just brought that back to mind. And it's, um to be here today, and to look at that time, because I remember going through that together. And had it happen, had it happened today, it would have been a different story. But because it happened at that time, and our relationship kind of fell apart, or we also were distant because of that happening. And we kind of fell away from each other during that time and did our own thing. But that was a huge grievance in my life. And at that time, thinking, like, because I lost you as, my best friend. And but just looking back at it now, it's like, oh, you stupid little girl. Like, if there was any time to be together more, and to draw nearer, and really be there for each other, that would have been the time. And so I'm just so glad how God, I'm skipping to the end, but we're gonna come back. But I'm just so glad how God has worked all of that. But anyway, let me continue with Kim, I believe, has the next card. Thank you, Anna. uh, Edder, you shared that your faith became real and personal later on in life. What was the moment or season that changed everything for you?
So, like was Anna was saying a little bit earlier, at this point, I distanced myself and I had set my mind up. So, within the 4 years, I was invested in the relationship that I was in, and I was not looking back. I was continuing on moving forward, and I was again like 4 years, yes, 4 years in the relationship. Um, but there was something quickly I realized in it. Even no matter how much I denied God, I knew his peace was gone. I felt, huh, life was a lot. Even though I struggled so much prior getting
Yeah.
into this relationship, I had realized that I was at least in peace before.
Yeah.
And so, but I kept like, nope, that's not it. I'm going strong. I'm setting my eyes here. I've made up my mind. I'm going here. And so something profound happened to me one day. And again, like I said, 4 years into this, I'm not opening my Bible no more. Lord, I'm not
Yeah.
speaking to you no more. I'm already in hell. I've accepted it. We made
Mhm.
our deal. We're moving our paths at this point. But one day I was in my room and we were making our weekend plans like we normally did. And and I remember thinking within that week, stuff kept coming a little bit back, coming back to me. Things that I used to remember, things I used to feel. I remember thinking, wow, even in this relationship, what I thought that I was being loved in, it didn't feel like love. You cannot deny love, true love. And I remember having those emotions within me, and I thought, what is these feelings I'm feeling? And I knew after a while sitting there, I was like, man, like I think, what am I doing with my life? Do I really want to pursue this? Because I was invested in that relationship. We were had plans for our future. I was going all in into this relationship. I had, and so having these thoughts, it really made me pay attention to them. And then sitting there, I remember thinking, like, Lord, um, if I come back, and I stopped. Like, there's no way I can come back. Like, you can't. Like, there's no way, Lord, that you would take me back. But I remember having those thoughts and kept kind of, slapped them out of my face. But immediately, I'm making plans, and then I heard something so profound, like it sounded and it felt like thunder to me. And I remember again laying there, and then it was like I looked at the door because it sounded like my door, like someone banged on it really hard. And that's why I say it sounded like lightning. I remember like so doors like right there, for example. So I remember hearing the door, and I turned immediately. It scared me in a different way. And I jumped up, and immediately God told me to open my Bible to Revelations 3:20. Um, and in Revelations 3:20, it says, "I stand at the door and knock, and if any man hears me, um, hears my voice, and opens the door, I will come into him and will dine with him, and he dine with me." And I, and I immediately thinking like, "Look, yes, yes." I, I, I just knew with all my heart that, Lord, like, I'm so sorry. I started to acknowledge the sin that I was doing. I started to acknowledge the emptiness that I felt. I started to realize, no, this is really not what I wanted. And then the biggest thing was like, Lord, you're still here. Like, you're still knocking at my door. Yeah. That was, like I said, having to go through the abandonment and knowing that, oh, you never left me. That was a huge deal for me. And so that's all I wanted was to know. So sorry. And that's all I wanted to know was that I was never left. And so knowing that God was there and He took me to Scripture in His Word, the very word that I denied within these couple of years, I thought, okay, Lord, yes, what's it called? I accept you, God, as my Lord. And one of the things I've learned about the word Lord, it means ownership. And Lord means like I surrender. This is it. But I still struggled a little bit after that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But yeah, that was basically it. Sorry. Yeah, just having him knock on the door and knowing that he never left me. That's what meant that was a done deal for me.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, Edner, and really taking us uh, through that time in your life and how you said how faith became real and personal in that time. Like you said, you weren't turning back. You already made up your mind. I'm in this relationship, been in it for 4 years. You know, I already left you, God. You can't, so you can't leave me. Why are you coming after me? And then just for you to, have that conviction, knowing that it's sitting in the back of your mind that is this really what I want? Do I want to continue to pursue this? I don't know. Like I never imagined my life to become where it is today after dealing with everything that's been stacked against you, and always feeling like I'll just never win. And getting to that point where you said you heard the knock on your door like the thunder, and then the Holy Spirit giving you the verse of
Yes.
Revelation 3:20 about standing at the door and knocking, that God is letting you know that He hasn't abandoned you and that He never abandoned you. So I mean,
I
just
like that you said that because as soon as he knew that I had that question in mind, he came in
yeah,
strong.
right what He knew. That's why I would know. Yeah, then God was like, "Here you go. Open up your Bible right now. Let you know I never left you. And that's the good thing, like you said, Lord ownership, and how God is. God sees all, God knows all, and He always knows what's best for us. And just hearing you share that's my first time ever hearing you share that. And it is just such a powerful testimony, Eder, and I'm just so thankful that we're able to sit here today and able to really hear your story and what God has taken you through and what He's continuing to do to this day. So thank you for sharing that, Edner. What did fully committing to Christ require you to surrender?
it required me to surrender everything that I thought I knew. And so how I um what I learned about surrendering is trusting God. And what I love about God is that He's patient. He knows you. He's working with you. And I got to really know this about the Lord because just because I surrendered to God that day did not
Yeah.
mean that all of a sudden I was transformed.
Yeah.
I remember walking with the Lord with that week, and I'm like, Lord, okay, I hear you. I know you're here. Thank you so much for not leaving me. I was so excited. But I said, Lord, but I'm still struggling with my
Yeah.
desires. I'm still the same person I was yesterday. I'm still carrying those things, those desires, the thoughts I have about myself. um how do I because I really wanted to learn because I'm relearning all the things that I
Yeah.
forgot. And so I'm like, Lord, how do I trust you to this? Like, help me, because I still feel gay, I still
Yeah.
feel attracted to other ladies. Like, what do I do with this emotions? And so God took one day, I was at work and praying, and I was sitting outside a wedding because I was heading home, and there was this woman who sat next to me, and she was so beautiful, and she came next to me, and she said, "Hey, I'm writing a book about the spirit and the flesh," and I thought that's so interesting
Yeah.
that someone so randomly sitting right next to me and talking to me about a book she's writing about the spirit and the
Yeah.
flesh. Like, okay, God, I hear you, but at the same time, because I was still praying, I remember thinking, "Woman, go away."
Yeah.
I was exhausted. It was the end of the day. I was still struggling, had these thoughts in my mind. But she said, "Here, would you like to look at this book?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And but she ended up handing me a stack of photos. And I remember grabbing them and thinking, "Where's the book?"
Yeah.
Like I see pictures. And so she asked me to go through the photos. And as I'm looking through the photos, it was a picture of a man in the middle with all these um, women around him, and they were half dressed. And I remember thinking to myself, like, why are you showing me these photos? What's going on? And every picture was getting worse than the first. But I saw this man in the middle, that stuck out to me because I remember thinking, like, how dare he? Like, who
Mhm.
is this guy? And she said, "That's me." And I remember I was scanning the girls in the photos. I'm like, "Which one is you?" Because what I'm looking at doesn't look like the picture. She's like, the one that looks like a man." And I remember looking, and I was like, "There's no way."
Yeah.
And so she said, "I was in a homosexual relationship for 12 years, and God had delivered me." And like, what message would
Wow.
come to me at such a time that I'm
Uh-huh.
praying? The woman I said, "Hush," was God
Yes.
speaking to me to answer the
Yes.
question that I had,
Mm.
which was to surrender. Because you're asking
Yes.
about and having to let go is one of the hardest things to do. So God
Oh
was just
yeah.
saying, Enter, let it go,
Yeah.
and you're gonna be okay. And so that's what I learned to. Oh, this is what this means. And when faith comes with obedience,
Yeah.
right? So again, yes, she said her message, but am I going to listen? And at that point, I said, "Okay, Lord, I'm seeing you. Thank you so much for answering this
Yeah.
so profoundly. I'm giving it to you."
Wow. I mean, God has such a sense of humor at the same time, and it's just so crazy how, you know, you read the verse in your bedroom and that God would never leave you and He has never left you. And then you're still struggling because, like you said, you're still the same person that you
Mhm.
were. But now you know, like, okay, God, you are there. And it started to pick up back the excitement of wanting to search, continue to search for Him and learn, okay,
Exactly.
God, what do I do next? But still struggling with the flesh. And just for you to sit there and then a random lady comes at where you're working, which is at the airport at this
Yes,
time,
yes.
just so randomly. What are the odds? There's millions of people and thousands of people that's going through the airport, and this one person comes and sits right next to you, and sits next to you and says, "Let me share my book." And reluctantly, you took the photos, look at the pictures, and just to see that this woman, beautiful woman that was sitting next to you, used to be, that was in a same sex relationship for 12 years and looked like a man, now has went back into being who she was created to
Yes. And
be.
that's why I mentioned that she is beautiful, because she does not look like what she had came out of. And so was that what see that's transformation.
Yes, exactly, to see what God can do
Mhm.
with the broken pieces and create something
Yes.
beautiful from it. And I am just, I wish I knew who that lady was just to say, man, thank you. You know, for her to feel led and called by the Holy Spirit to go sit by you and to share that with you. And that was exactly what you needed at that exact moment. And for you to know, like, okay, God, I hear you loud and clear. I'm going to surrender. I'm going to be obedient and continue my faith with you. So
Yes.
thank you for sharing that, Edner. How is your relationship with God today different from how it was growing up?
A very simple, short question. Answer to that one is that he's my dad.
Yeah.
Um, how to say this? He's my dad. I can actually, when I pray to him, I can say Father. I can say Abba.
Yes.
I can go to him. My dad's gonna take care of me
Yeah.
because of my relationship since I was younger. He's answered and he's came through. He's been faithful to
Yes.
me, and so seeing and so just having again like having two felt earthly fathers and having him like father above all fathers, like that's the one I can call my
Yeah.
dad, and so that's the answer is that he's my dad.
And that's the perfect answer because he
Mhm.
is. To put yourself out there, it's always has to take a lot, and it's a brave thing to do because the guy in the front is always the guy who's going to get hit first, and is always the guy who gets taken out first. So thank you so much. Right. So um, thank you, truly. Thank you so much for doing that and for making us stand and letting people know exactly who you are and where you are and how to reach you. So thank you so much for blessing us today with this podcast. There's no better way to start off 2026
Yes.
with this first episode. So, for those of you who are watching, get used to seeing Edner here because I have a feeling that you'll see her more often. But thank you so much for joining in, guys. We always love hanging out together. And one more time, thank you for tuning in on another episode of What Anna Said podcast. Bye.